I'm Julia Summers. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Highlands Coalition, and the Coalition is a co-sponsor of this evening's webinar with Jim and Adrienne. We're very pleased to be able to do this because this is a really important issue for the New Jersey Highlands, where we certainly have flooding, we certainly have water quality problems. Last summer's experiences with harmful algal blooms, which ruined the summer for many people, are a perfect example of that. And one of the only ways that we can see going forward, especially amongst smaller communities, which is mostly what we have in the Highlands, we don't have any large cities, is regional collaboration if we're going to create stormwater utilities. So this is an issue of real importance for the Highlands, and we're very pleased that this conversation is happening.
Great, thank you, Julia. And Katie, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Katie Barakat, and I am the Water Quality Coordinator here with New Jersey LCV. I actually help run our Flood Defense New Jersey Coalition. Pinelands and the Highlands Coalition are some of our partners, but we are a statewide coalition. We have quite a few partners, and basically we all work together to continue to raise awareness for stormwater.
I got another one going on.
And then also just giving municipalities and, regional municipal entities any technical information and support so that as people do begin to become more interested in implementing utilities here in New Jersey, they have some good information out there.
Great, thank you. I was just going through and muting some people, so just keep that in mind. If you can mute yourself, just to make sure we avoid any kind of background noise. I think everyone pretty much summarized, why we're here this evening, why we find this issue of utmost importance to protect our waterways, our ecosystems, and also to help community members to reduce their flooding and, of course, the environmental consequences from that. So with that being said, Jim, I will just turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Jacqueline. I think this is the first time I've ever done a presentation sitting down, so let's see how it goes. I appreciate you having us tonight. This is a topic that is very politically charged, but one that I believe is something that New Jersey is going to need to tackle in the very near future. The only way we're going to solve some of our both flooding and water quality problems, I believe, is if we look at them very differently than we have in the past, and if we provide a funding mechanism to be able to pay for the solutions that are needed. So what we wanted to do tonight is talk to you a little bit about stormwater utilities, something that was not allowed in New Jersey until the last year. This is nothing that is required, but it is now allowed. And so we wanted to talk to you about that so that you could think about whether, your organization or your municipality or your environmental group might be able to benefit from such a... Jacqueline, maybe you want to mute everyone and then I'll unmute myself.
Put it on a train, have me grab it. Put it on the train, have me grab it. All right, can I have you pull into number 4, please? To it right in that black wall. Yep.
All right, I'll keep going. So what are some of the municipal stormwater challenges that we have today? Well, obviously we have flooding. That is becoming more and more of an issue, even in places that in the past didn't have flooding problems. We've got increased development, but frankly, I don't think a lot of our problem is from that right now. I think what's happening is we have more intense storms occurring more frequently. So you might have had places in the past that only flooded once every 100 years, and now they're flooding once every year. And that is a big difference. We've got polluted streams. Many of you have been involved in the TMDL studies up in northern New Jersey, the Passaic, and central New Jersey, the Raritan TMDLs were two recent studies that I was involved with, and I know Julia was involved with, and several of you also. A lot of effort went into that. But the benefit of those studies is never going to be achieved if we don't handle the non-point source or the stormwater portion of those TMDLs. On top of those two things, we've got aging infrastructure. And, you know, that has made a lot of news recently. You see, you know, this isn't on the stormwater side, but how often do you turn on the TV now and find out about another water main break somewhere? There were a couple in Hoboken recently. And, you know, all aspects of our infrastructure, including stormwater infrastructure, are aging. And frankly, people don't pay attention to it because it's underground. And mayors like spending money on things that are visible, not pipes underground. Tightening regulations. The municipal, the MS4 permit, municipal separate storm sewer system permits are going to begin requiring municipalities to do more than they had to before with respect to stormwater. So the regulations are tightening and more will have to happen because of that. And the last is level funding. New Jersey has 2% caps on municipal budgets. So if a municipality is asked to do more by the New Jersey DEP on stormwater, they can't raise taxes more than a certain amount to be able to cover those expenses. So how else can we fund stormwater in New Jersey? You know, when I think about this, you realize how little management, well, how little focus there is on stormwater management. Think of other utilities in New Jersey. They are managed. Things like wastewater, you have wastewater utilities, drinking water. We have lots of companies, private and municipal entities in New Jersey that are focused on drinking water, electricity. These are managed utilities, natural gas, roads and bridges, telecommunications. But stormwater really doesn't have a common place of management. So how do we fund stormwater improvements today? I mean, really, most stormwater improvements are funded through municipal taxes. There are grants that people can get from New Jersey DEP. There are low-interest loans that you can get from the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank or the Water Bank. There are charitable foundations that have grants, but most of the grants that are available are not big dollars. You're not going to solve major stormwater problems with those grants. Well, one new opportunity for funding is stormwater utilities. And, you know, that's what we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about now. So back in March of 2019, Governor Murphy passed the Clean Stormwater and Flood Reduction Act. And this act was really what now authorizes municipalities, counties, and certain authorities to establish stormwater utilities. And it recognizes that problems affecting residents due to inadequate stormwater infrastructure and management lead to health and safety issues. Economic well-being is not necessarily in place if we don't take care of those things. And it's a real quality of life issue. Also, it recognized that stormwater infrastructure in New Jersey lacks a dedicated source of funding for upgrades and for maintenance. A big, big issue. And it allows for a fee to be assessed on a fair and equitable approximation of proportionate contribution of stormwater runoff from real property. That's a mouthful, but what it really means is you can assess a fee, but it has to be in proportion to the amount of stormwater you generate. So we'll talk about that a little more in a minute. Now, stormwater utilities are new in New Jersey. As I just said, they were made available to us in March of 2019. But stormwater utilities have been used throughout the U.S. for many years now. There are over 1,700 stormwater utilities in the U.S. And one thing I found was interesting is the typical annual user fee for a stormwater utility is only about $50 a year. So the fees are not great in most places, but they do provide a pot of money for that's dedicated towards stormwater management and used for that purpose. So what's the benefit of a stormwater utility? You know, a lot of people look at this and say, oh my God, why would you ever want another utility, another place for bureaucracy? It's just, you know, that's not an efficient way of handling it. But let's think about it. Here's one benefit. First, it provides a steady, dedicated revenue stream. Dedicated revenue stream. That's the key here. What happens right now is often somebody may have every intention of maintaining their stormwater system in the best possible way, but something else comes up and the money gets spent on that, and then there's never money left for stormwater. It provides for the capital improvements that are needed, the revenue requirements can often increase as the infrastructure ages. So what often happens, and many of my clients I've seen this with, I have one client, it's a relatively newly developed municipality. So basically what happened is the developers put in the stormwater infrastructure when the neighborhoods were built. Now, 20 or 30 years have gone by, and the stormwater infrastructure is starting to fail. They're not used to having to deal with stormwater. They never dealt with it before. They thought those pipes that got put in the ground would be good forever. So what's happening is, as time goes on, there's a greater need for them to spend money on capital improvements. And the revenue requirements to do that are obviously greater. And finally, you end up with a more predictable and a steady stream if you have a stormwater utility that's collecting a small fee for the services and improvements that are provided. Another benefit is, you know, a lot of times you're going to hear, when someone starts talking stormwater utility, you're going to hear, oh, the rain tax, this is another tax. Well, it's really not a tax, it's a fee. And it's just like when you pay your water bill, you're not claiming that's a tax, you're paying for the amount of water that you're using. Well, here it would be the same kind of thing. You're paying for your pro rata share of the stormwater that you're generating. And it's apportioning the cost burden to each property that contributes stormwater to the system. Now, Adrienne's going to touch on this a little bit later, but what's really interesting is that when you look at the numbers, you see that if you have a stormwater utility or some sort of a regional collaboration, you can typically save between 50 and 70% when you compare the stormwater utility to the municipality funding it. And she'll explain, she's got some good examples on this. She gets to have all the fun tonight. She has all the good examples. Also, another big issue is that fees are collected from tax-exempt users. So the example that I like to use is I live in Princeton. A huge percentage of the land in Princeton is owned by Princeton University. Well, Princeton University doesn't pay any taxes. Well, I shouldn't say that. Most of their properties are tax exempt. And so they have this vast amount of stormwater runoff, yet they're not paying for any of that stormwater treatment or pipes within their tax bill, because they basically have no tax bill. So the fees can be collected from people that are not paying property taxes now. And then credits are provided based on the level of service received. So for example, if you're a homeowner and you put in a rain garden, you would be able to get a credit off of your stormwater fee. So you have some control over the amount of money you would need to pay in the fee. It also provides incentive for businesses to reduce impervious surfaces and also to provide stormwater treatment on their own. So let's think about this. Right now, what happens? A typical homeowner on the left side of my slide is paying for stormwater facilities within the town through their property taxes. But the school on the right that has an unbelievably large or an unbelievably larger amount of impervious surface, and therefore a much larger amount of stormwater runoff, is not paying anything for stormwater management right now. So this is a way of changing that and having the entity with the stormwater runoff paying their proportionate share. So how does the stormwater utility work? Well, you form a utility. You formally form the utility. And what's interesting about this is it doesn't have to be a new group. A municipality can form a utility. A group of municipalities could form a utility. A county could form a utility. Or, for example, municipal utility authorities can form a stormwater utility. So that's a good example, because there are a lot of municipal stormwater utilities or there are a lot of municipal utilities and regional wastewater or water utilities that could take on stormwater management and become a stormwater utility. What I like about that model is you don't have to hire an executive director for a stormwater utility that operates on its own. You already have an executive director. You already have vehicles. You already have maintenance people. It's just a very efficient way of dealing with a stormwater utility. Once you have the utility formed, then you can assess fees. And you can, as I said before, you can provide credits for impact reduction. So and those credits promote green stormwater BMPs. So if people put in rain gardens and bioretention systems or plant trees, anything that's done that would reduce their impact to the storm sewer system, they could get a credit for it. And those fees have to be assessed based on how much needs to be collected. And then once the fees are collected, they're reinvested into the storm sewer system, or the money can even go towards funding studies, design and engineering costs, and then obviously maintaining and repairing and constructing stormwater infrastructure. So just a couple of myths. I mentioned before the rain tax comment. You hear this all the time. Rain tax, it's just another way of New Jersey sucking more taxes out of the taxpayers. Well, as I said before, services are provided in exchange for fees received. It's just like water, sewer, and electrical services. The fee is assessed in proportion to the stormwater generated, and the fee can be reduced through credits for stormwater improvements. So it is different than a tax. Now, my feeling is it is not even worth arguing over whether it's a fee or a tax. I think there are municipalities that are going to need to have, they're going to have a need to spend more money. Whether it's that their stormwater infrastructure is starting to crumble, or whether it's that DEP comes to them and says they're going to start enforcing the non-point source component of TMDL studies, and they're going to have to reduce their pollutant load to the river that they discharge to. It could be a situation where a huge expense is suddenly put on a municipality. And I don't believe going the traditional route is going to allow them to cover that gigantic expense. Another myth is that a stormwater utility will just create another bureaucracy. And I touched on this a minute ago. An existing authority or public works department can form a municipal, can form a stormwater utility. So you don't have to create a whole new management structure. And also, as you're going to hear in a minute from Adrienne, regionalization can really save money and lead to more successful projects. So I'll just leave you with, water does not follow municipal boundaries. And, you know, I am a strong believer in municipalities getting together and tackling this by collaborating to provide a regional solution. And Adrienne is going to explain a couple of, or give you a couple of examples of some of the projects she's been involved with in Pennsylvania, where they've been using stormwater utilities more often and for a longer period of time, and where collaboration has really worked, both from a practical perspective, but also even from a financial perspective. So Adrienne, I'll turn it over to you from here.
Thanks, Jim. So managing stormwater on a regional or county-wide basis, it does derive many benefits. And one benefit is that a regional solution supports watershed-based planning and management. We find that political boundaries and watershed boundaries, they seldom coincide. And when you can move outside of political boundaries and can solve stormwater problems on a watershed basis, you can start to address the problem and the source together. So for instance, you could address the downstream flooding problem along with the upstream cause of the flooding. So this allows for much more effective stormwater solutions to be implemented. You're no longer dealing with a fragmented per municipality approach. We can start solving stormwater issues looking at the watershed level. More holistic projects alone, you know, that provides some cost-effective solutions, but additional savings are also derived by eliminating duplication of efforts and gaining economies of scale. You know, there's a lot of fixed costs associated with stormwater management. And when you can divide those fixed costs up over more users, then economies of scale are realized and costs per municipality come down. Along those same lines are increased purchasing power for equipment and supplies and enhanced opportunities for government grants and loans. I'm sure you've realized that subsidized funding is getting harder and harder to come by. And we're seeing that funding agencies are giving higher consideration to entities that have sustainable stormwater programs. So those that are implementing regional approaches do what they can to streamline costs and then have developed a long-term funding mechanism, which ensures that the infrastructure installed through the grant loan program are going to be adequately maintained. Also, a lot of funding programs are political in nature, and legislators are more likely to get behind projects benefiting a larger constituent base. So regional entities can generally get more favorable consideration for grant dollars. We've also seen in some states, such as Pennsylvania, that Pennsylvania DEP is willing to streamline regulatory requirements when municipalities collaborate on regional solutions to meet MS4 permit needs. And really the biggest seller for multi-municipal collaboration is the cost savings. It's just more cost effective and an equitable approach for ratepayers. Go to the next slide. So in thinking through the benefits of collaboration, I wanted to share a few case studies of regional stormwater solutions. And the first one is Wyoming Valley Sanitary Authority. 2 years ago, they formed the first regional stormwater utility in Pennsylvania. And historically, the role of WVSA was as a wastewater authority serving 36 municipalities in Luzerne County, which includes the city of Wilkes-Barre and surrounding area. And those municipalities are all shown as green and yellow municipalities on the map. Of those 36 municipalities, 32 entered into intergovernmental agreements with WVSA for the authority to provide regional stormwater services. You can go on to the next slide. Currently, WVSA is in phase 1 of their stormwater management vision, where they're serving as the permanent administrator for their 32 municipalities. So as part of that role, they support the municipalities in a number of regulatory requirements. And that includes things such as citing green infrastructure projects. We call them BMPs, or best management practices, to improve local water quality. They're designing and they're installing those BMPs, and then they're going to be handling the long-term operation and maintenance of all of the green infrastructure. They also use their crews to support the local municipal crews with the municipally owned stormwater infrastructure. So the municipalities are currently maintaining ownership of the existing hard assets like the pipes and the catch basins. WVSA is coming along and installing green infrastructure solutions. And then WVSA supports the local municipal crews in maintaining the infrastructure that the municipalities are currently retaining. WVSA has also teamed up with the Army Corps of Engineers, and they're going through and they're mapping the location of all the municipally owned stormwater systems. And WVSA is helping with a lot of the minimum control measures, or SBRs, that are associated with the municipality's MS4 permits. So that includes things like handling public education throughout the 32 municipalities, having public involvement events where the public gets involved in projects and community events to promote water quality. They're also helping local public works crews with illicit discharge detection, helping with post-construction runoff control, and pollution prevention and good housekeeping. And then they support the municipalities in submitting annual reports to Pennsylvania DEP and help with also auditing the process. You can go on to the next slide. The municipalities, however, aren't fully off the hook. They maintain ownership of the MS4 permits for the time being, and as I just mentioned before, they maintain local control of existing stormwater infrastructure. So WVSA sends crews to each municipality for a few days a month, assisting with O&M and capital improvements led by the local public works departments within the municipalities. And then WVSA also takes a portion of the stormwater fee revenue and they place that into savings accounts for each of the municipalities. The municipalities then can use that savings account to improve their existing stormwater assets. So to do capital improvement projects or to buy equipment and supplies that they need to maintain the infrastructure. Property owners are also a large part of the solution. They partner with WVSA and the municipality to implement green infrastructure for the control of stormwater runoff, and they engage in public events promoting water quality, and credits to reduce fees are available for both of those activities. And I've really seen that implementing a stormwater fee really incentivizes property owners to get involved. So for WVSA's service area, solving stormwater, it's no longer just a municipal issue, but a lot of property owners have chosen to get involved and to partner with the municipalities and WVSA to do projects and to maintain stormwater on their properties. And they do that because now they're incentivized to do that. They pay a stormwater fee and then have a reduction of the fee in the form of a credit. In each of the 32 municipalities served by WVSA, each municipality is saving between 50 and 70% in capital improvement cost over the next 5 years, and that savings is projected to continue over the next 20 years or more. 90% of the property owners in that area are paying a stormwater fee to WVSA of $4.80 per month or less. And that equates to roughly a 60% savings to the average property owner in paying a stormwater fee as opposed to paying through taxes. And as I mentioned before, a stormwater fee, it really gives property owners a say as to how much they support and pay for stormwater service. When it's funded by a tax, they're charged based upon assessed property value, and the charge isn't altered by if and how they choose to control stormwater on site. But with a fee, property owners are given a fee reduction in the form of a % reduction off their bill when they collaborate. There's also a number of counties in Pennsylvania that are working on countywide or watershed-based solutions. And we're currently working with 5 counties that are at one stage or another. Due to the COVID pandemic, we're seeing a number of counties step forward now and they want to get involved with helping their municipalities to manage stormwater. So counties are realizing that municipalities will likely deal with cash flow challenges this year, and tax revenue will likely be decreased in 2021. So as a result, we're seeing counties decide that now is the right time to step in and offer countywide stormwater management because it saves municipalities money. And no longer funding stormwater costs out of the municipal general fund, it will create a positive cash flow back to the municipal budget. So one of those counties that's stepping forward now is Dauphin County, which includes the city of Harrisburg in the center of Pennsylvania and 40 neighboring municipalities. A few years ago, Dauphin County adopted a comprehensive plan, which stated that the county would support the efforts of municipalities and others to address MS4 stormwater requirements. And you can see on this slide that there is a need for a better stormwater solution. All of the light blue streams on this map are not impaired. And that means that all of the red, yellow, orange, and green lines show impairments. So these are streams in which, due to pollution, they're not meeting their intended or original uses. You can go to the next slide. So how is the county getting involved? Well, they started by getting in front of the municipal managers to discuss the benefits of collaboration and what it could look like. They also sent a stormwater survey to each municipality to gauge their interest for support and their interest in working together. Here are the results. There was generally an interest in the county leading funding opportunities. Also an interest in the county leading large-scale regional projects, which could better improve water quality than smaller, more fragmented projects. The municipalities accepted that finding new sources of funding for stormwater needs is inevitable, whether that comes in the form of taxes, fees, grants, or loans. And the municipalities in the county which do not hold MS4 permits were also interested in a new funding source for infrastructure and for stream restoration, which was similar to the MS4s. You can go on to the next slide. So the intent is for the county to support municipalities in implementing green infrastructure BMPs on a watershed level to address local stream impairments. And in addition to the installation of agricultural BMPs on a county level to reduce nitrogen impairments to the Chesapeake Bay. A new MS4 permit is intended to be released by Pennsylvania DEP in 2023, which would place sediment and nitrogen reduction requirements on the municipalities. So the vision is to implement programming now to assist the municipalities in complying at a lower cost by that time. You can go on to the next slide. So the solution that's being offered by the county is going to consist of overall program coordination to assist the municipalities with staying on track for permit compliance. Also administration of grant and loan funds to support green infrastructure, design, permitting, and construction. And they're looking to implement regional stormwater BMPs, specifically to help meet the nitrogen goals. And they're looking to pair initiatives together. So on a countywide basis, there's more of an opportunity to put BMPs in areas that don't just help meet the sediment pollution and nitrogen pollution reduction goals, but they can also help solve flooding problems at the same time. So you're basically killing two birds with one stone when you can move out of municipal borders and you can more strategically site the location of green infrastructure projects to solve multiple problems. The 2023 MS4 permit I just mentioned has requirements to necessitate urban and rural partnerships to reduce the cost of compliance. And they're also going to work with the municipalities to help develop partnerships and collaboration with all levels of government, local, state, and federal, along with agencies, and also corporations, businesses, and nonprofits in order to be able to implement more meaningful and less costly solutions. There's 3 different levels of regional involvement that municipalities in Dauphin County can opt into. And depending on if they're MS4 regulated and to what extent they would like to partner, each level of service has a different set of services and a different cost that's associated with it. In the case of Dauphin County, a number of the municipalities are already charging a stormwater fee to property owners within their municipal borders. So in this instance, the county decided not to charge a stormwater fee of its own to property owners, but instead the municipality is going to use a portion of the fee revenue that they're collecting, and they're going to provide that back to the county, and the cost per municipality are being developed and allocated based upon a cost share formula. You can go on to the next slide. Lycoming County Regional Sewer Authority is another example as to what a regional solution can look like. This solution is smaller than the last two that we spoke about. Historically, Lycoming County led the cooperation between municipalities on the north and south sides of the Susquehanna River surrounding the city of Williamsport. After there was a change in county planning staff, the large-scale cooperation wound up disbanding, and it changed into smaller groups of municipalities working together. So with that, Lycoming County Regional Sewer Authority was approached by two boroughs to expand and take on stormwater efforts. You can go on to the next slide. So historically, the role of Lycoming County Water and Sewer Authority was to provide water and wastewater service throughout different portions of the county. And so with this, they're increasing their responsibilities and they're taking over some stormwater costs. So this slide shows a breakdown of responsibilities between the authority and two boroughs that it is now beginning to provide stormwater service to. The top blue rectangle, you can see that the authority is going to be handling various stormwater programming activities. They're going to be managing and coordinating requirements under the borough's MS4 permits. They'll also be handling the stormwater fee billing, mapping of the stormwater systems, and other administrative functions. And the cost of those services is split between the municipalities based upon pollutant loads and impervious surface within each of the municipalities. And with that, 70% of those costs are being billed to property owners in one of the boroughs, and the remaining 30% is billed to the remaining borough. The authority is also handling the professional services of setting up the programming, the fee, and the credit policy, the engineering of projects, and those costs are split 50-50 between both of the municipalities. Each borough has their public works crews maintaining some functions of service. Those are shown in the purple and the teal box. And that includes things such as operation and maintenance of the existing pipelines and inlets, and handling things such as street sweeping. And the authority is giving some fee revenue back to those municipalities to cover a portion of those costs. The authority will be implementing the green infrastructure projects, which are referred to on the slide as compliance BMP projects. And they're going to be taking out the debt service. So they'll be handling the debt in order to fund those projects. And the cost of that debt service will be split 70-30 based upon, again, the pollution loads and the impervious area. So what that means is the property owners in each of those two municipalities are paying a slightly different fee based upon the cost and the need differential between those two boroughs. You can go on to the next slide. So what steps did Lycoming County Water and Sewer Authority take in order to get to a regional initiative? Well, first what they did is they executed a memorandum of understanding between the authority and both of the boroughs, and that defined the initial roles and responsibilities of each of the three parties. And it also defined how the cost of implementing the regional solution would be shared. So in getting from commencing the planning effort to when they were going to start billing the fee revenue. That was defined in the initial memorandum of understanding. Then after they did that, they went and they finalized what the long-term roles and responsibilities were going to be between the authority and the borough. And once those were defined and they were able to come up with their long-term cost-sharing mechanism, they executed an intergovernmental cooperation agreement. Since then, they developed a regional plan. They call them pollutant reduction plans which gets submitted to Pennsylvania DEP that shows the locations in which they're going to be siting green infrastructure projects in order to meet specific pollutant reduction requirements. They developed budget protections for the MS4 permit term and started implementing a public education and outreach strategy to engage and educate the property owners on the regional program, the benefits, the associated costs, and then went on to develop the rates, and they're currently working on developing the credit policy. They're starting to commence programming, and billing for the service is anticipated to commence in, I believe it's June or July of this year. You can go on to the next slide. So if you're interested, how do we recommend going about implementing a regional approach? The number one tip is having a single entity that's willing to spearhead the initiative. I've seen many different regional collaborations, and the ones that are the most impactful and the most cost-effective is when either the county or a regional wastewater authority or another single entity is willing to get involved and to manage implementation of the program. So having single point leadership as opposed to just a group of municipalities with no single leader working together. Also, having the leader willing to expend money in the beginning to launch the initiative can be really important. You know, realize there's costs associated with getting a utility off the ground, but once the stormwater fee is implemented, that leader can be repaid through fee revenue. And with each of the utilities that we've implemented, what we've done is in the first year budget of the utility, we've budgeted in for that entity to get fully repaid with any money that they put out in the beginning to get this started. Also, currently, there's some grant funds available in New Jersey for planning and implementation of authorities. And you can follow up with the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters and Katie that's here with us tonight for more information on that grant opportunity. If it's just a single municipality implementing a utility, then a feasibility study typically isn't necessary. However, with regional approaches, it can really be critical. Provides the opportunity for the vision and the financial benefits to be fully considered. Go on to the next slide. So with a regional feasibility study, the first step is really to define local government needs. So what are the needs of the various municipalities? How are the needs similar from municipality to municipality? How are they different? In which ways is each municipality willing to cooperate and to work together? And we typically start assessing these needs through stormwater surveys that we ask municipal managers to fill out. And then we also have meetings where we pull together municipal managers or elected officials, and we'll go through and we'll talk about options for programming and benefits, and we'll use polling software to get feedback from all of the participants through the course of the meeting. The next step then is to define the benefits of the regional approach, and benefits will be different for each region. You know, coming together requires each municipality to give up some control. So defining the benefits of giving up control can be really key, and it's necessary so elected officials can justify to their constituents that working together really makes sense. Once you know the needs and the willingness to work together and the benefits, they can then be combined into a vision in order to establish the scope and the time frame for working together. And we found that with regional approaches, summarizing your analysis and the results in a study is important, allowing each community to understand the intent, the reasoning, and the benefits of the proposed solution. It also helps get the elected officials in each municipality on board. And not just doing the feasibility study, but partnering that with a business plan. The business plan will go through and it will look at the intended cost to implement the regional solution over a period of time, and we'll compare costs to do things regionally as opposed to the cost of each municipality or to continue handling it alone. And that can really show and define the cost savings that can help municipalities and property owners really get behind and understand why it makes sense to opt into a regional approach. What's even more important than the written report is communication. And really the most important step is meeting regularly with the other municipal leaders to sustain a dialogue, which fosters communication and cooperation. And so with that, I think we wanted to move into any questions or further discussion tonight.
Wonderful. Thank you both. I did put in a little prompt in the chat session because I was curious where some of our attendees were from. Here are a couple people so far. It looks like South Jersey, Burlington, Atlantic County. One person is actually in Philadelphia, but moving to Atlantic County soon. So for those of you that are listening, if you didn't see it in the chat session, I am curious, and we are trying to just get a good sense of where people are from this evening. In addition, if you have any questions at this time, I would welcome you. If you would like, you can either take yourself off mute, raise your hand, or post into the chat session to ask a question at this time. And just an FYI, looks like several Burlington County people, Mercer, Westchester County. Okay, so here's one question, and it was, I see Dan. Thanks, Dan. How long does it generally take to establish a stormwater utility?
Typically, we find that for a single municipality, they typically want to go through the process and get it fully implemented within 6 to 9 months. However, once they start on in that process, they typically realize that they prefer a little bit longer, more like a 12 to 18 month time frame. That gives all of the elected officials an opportunity to really get up to speed and kind of wrap their heads around the long-term vision of the program, the rate structure options, and then move in and have a chance to talk about the credit policy. And then throughout that period of time to also be engaging property owners throughout the community. That could be in the form of a stakeholder advisory committee that could meet 5 or 6 times and talk about the long-term vision of the utility, levels of service, cost, rate structures, credit options. And then typically along with that is a more robust public education outreach campaign where a municipality will use various methods for getting communication out to the property owners. And they'll do that throughout the course of the planning and implementation so that they try to avoid surprises when the fee actually gets implemented. So I would say typically a 12-month long time period is what most municipalities find that they feel comfortable with.
Great. Said thank you. Another question, what type of governmental entities can be assessed the fee, like meaning who would then pay that fee? Like for instance, they said federal, state, county, municipal, school.
Sure. Jim, do you want to start off on that one?
Sure. I mean, there's been a fair amount of discussion of that in New Jersey. And since we don't have a stormwater utility yet, this is not set in stone. In fact, New Jersey DEP right now is creating a guidance document for stormwater utilities. And they say that they're going to cover that issue. So I think we have to wait a little bit longer for guidance specific to New Jersey. Adrienne, maybe you can talk about what you found in Pennsylvania and some other places.
Sure. So, so in Pennsylvania, what we found is that we're assessing fees, municipalities and utilities are assessing fees to federal properties, state and county properties, municipal properties, schools. And what we found is that federal properties, like properties owned by the Navy, they've come back and they've asked a lot of good questions about the fee and how it was established. And really, they want to make sure that it's equitable. And they've asked, you know, are there state properties in your service area that are being charged? Are there municipal properties in your service area that are being charged? And basically, based upon your answer to that, if they determine that the fee is being equitably assessed, then they've said, you know, we realize based upon current federal law that we need to pay the stormwater fee. In Pennsylvania right now, there has been some pushback from state properties in paying a stormwater fee. And so we're seeing a lot of the municipalities start to think about how they might push that with the state. Legislation was actually proposed in Pennsylvania to exempt out state properties from paying a stormwater fee, and that legislation did not get enacted. So by the fact that they actually developed and proposed that legislation, a lot of municipalities are seeing that as an omission, that they realize that they do actually need to pay fees. In most cases, we are seeing that counties are paying fees, and we're having municipalities paying fees as well.
Great. Any New Jersey area right now working on getting one up and running?
Did you say any New Jersey area?
Yes, right. So do we know of any municipalities right now, counties, other entities?
I know of a couple that are thinking about it, but I do not know anybody who is actively pursuing it at this point. And in fact, I had a meeting the other day, a virtual meeting with a few people at DEP, New Jersey DEP, that are very interested in getting some stormwater utilities up and running in New Jersey. So certainly if anybody has any interest in doing that, I think DEP will provide a lot of incentive for you to do it now because they want to have some good examples. So if anyone, you know, is thinking about it economically, it might be a very good time to do it because you may get much more grant funding now than you would down the road.
Yeah, that is true. Also, I would say in getting a utility implemented, one of the more costly items is developing impervious area estimates for all of the properties within the municipality, because impervious area estimates for property is what's used to assess the fee. And I know there's some great opportunities now in New Jersey to get that impervious analysis done. I know before in talking with Katie from the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, there are several areas where impervious area has been developed or is in the process of being developed. And as I mentioned before, there are some grant opportunities that she can speak to as well.
I was going to say, Katie, I don't know if you had any places, although I want to say that I do know, I thought it was like one or two in North Jersey, right? They're not necessarily up and running or even in the very early phases, but I think they are working on putting together some of the pieces because they want to pursue it as well. But I don't know if Katie, you had anything else to add to that.
Sure. So we do have an RFP right now, like Adrienne said in one of her slides. It is specifically for towns that are located within the Delaware River watershed, and you can also be part of the Kirkwood-Cohansey cluster as well. That's acceptable. But it's essentially for towns to just either begin to think about it. So doing those kinds of things like finding staff time, doing those initial impervious coverage assessments, feasibility studies, things like that. We know that they can be very expensive, and we're just trying to act as a resource to help any organizations or towns get over part of the initial hurdle, especially now that, you know, municipal budgets are really taking a hit. One of our other partners, actually New Jersey Future, they have been working very closely with the DEP, but they've also been developing their own resource center that is going to be launched, I believe, in the next month or so online, that will have a plethora of information for municipal officials, the public, and it will have a bunch of different targeted information on how to get something started, kind of like a one-stop shop for people to go as well. We are also working together to, we're in the end stages, toward the end of working on a model ordinance for towns that are seriously considering it. But, those are just kind of the things that we are beginning to work on. And, we realize that towns may be apprehensive right now, but, there are resources out there. So if you know the right people to talk to and you know the right places to look, definitely don't be afraid to reach out.
Great, thank you. All right, so any other last questions? I don't see anything else in the group chat, but if people could still answer about what county you live in, we would greatly appreciate it. We had about 7 people that answered. That would be helpful to us. Otherwise, do any of our speakers have any parting comments?
No, I would say if anyone has questions afterwards or is interested in brainstorming opportunities and just what it could look like for their community, both Jim and I are available, and we certainly welcome you giving us a call just to help you kind of brainstorm and have some initial thoughts. So our contact information is on the slide, and don't hesitate to reach out to either one of us.
Thank you. Yeah, Jim?
Adrienne said it perfectly. I won't drag this on.
Great. Well, there are a number of people saying thank you, saying it was very informative. I think it is a very good presentation. We did record it, so for those of you, if you want to share with someone else, we should be sending out a link that will have the recording of the session, so then you can pass it on to other council members or just anybody else you think might be interested. And again, thank you all for joining. Thank you to our presenters. Thank you to Katie for co-hosting, as well as New Jersey Highlands Coalition that had to jump off. And thank you all from Pinelands Preservation Alliance. Everyone stay well, and hopefully we will be talking soon about your town's next stormwater utility.
Thanks, Jacqueline.